I took her in for a well child checkup and had noticed her eye was turning in a little bit and thought, well, that's really weird. I've never seen that, and it didn't come up in any of the baby books I'd ever read about. I mentioned it to my mother, who was a first-time grandma, and grandma's an RN, and was immediately like, you know what? It couldn't hurt to get her checked out. So how about you just take her in? I know it's stressful, and you have a newborn, and she's 5 months old at the time. But I'll pay for you to go get her seen by the pediatric ophthalmologist. And sure enough, the ophthalmologist took one look at her and said, she's got what I can see are 4 discrete tumors in one eye. Turned out once we got into an OR and they got a good look, it was 9. So thank goodness we picked it up as early as we did. Most kids with bilateral retinoblastoma pick up about a year of age, and Kalia was 5 months. So we were lucky that we were way, way ahead of the curve. They said, you're going to need to take her to a teaching hospital. We know somebody in Utah, we know somebody in Oregon, we know somebody in Washington. And I said, how about Oregon? Oregon sounds great. So that's sort of how we got started with Ronald McDonald House, because we had to go back and forth to Oregon to see the specialist it was every 3 weeks for probably close to a year, for laser therapy and chemotherapy and cryotherapy. And meanwhile, she's this tiny kid, and I'm trying to juggle employment and taking care of her and keeping us both sane and all this travel, and it was a very intense time. Luckily, you were cute. So it was a real relief to be able to come home and say, you know, if nothing else, I have a place tonight where we could kick back a little bit and she can play in the playroom, and we know dinner's going to be ready, and you know, there'll be something to grab tomorrow morning for breakfast, and I don't have to think about one more logistical thing on the way to the hospital. So that was really comforting. So one night, right before her 4th birthday, I'm reading her a bedtime story, and I'm actually right next to you, just like this. Mm-hmm. And I look, and I can see a shadow in her iris. So we had a scan in a couple of weeks. I mentioned it to the doctor, and sure enough, it turned out to be a brand new, walloping, very fast-growing tumor, and it was anteriorly placed, so it's on the front of her eyeball, kind of facing backward, which meant it was really hard to treat with lasers or cryotherapy. We ended up having an enucleation surgery, which is where basically a surgical removal of the eye. With retinoblastoma, the risk is that if untreated, the tumors will kind of crawl up the optic nerve eventually and get into the kid's brain. At that point, survival rate is extremely low. So the idea is if we remove the eye, then there's no worry about, you know, incursion into the brain at that point. So it was not a fun experience, but I was like, I can deal with one eye. I can't deal with you not being here. So basically the first 5 years was just a blur of hotel rooms, appointments, Ronald McDonald House, different cities, and trying to sort of be a normal little kid in the middle of it.
I do definitely remember the Ronald McDonald House, playing in the playroom. It was scary a lot of the time because, you know, the weird smells of the hospital, like not being able to have my mom with me in the OR. But it was nice to come back to the house and just relax, and like I would get to play and I would get to eat like a good dinner. I did get some bullying. I don't think you really ever heard about it, but like
yeah, I did.
A lot of like Cyclops or freak show, like, oh god, it's a zombie, like she's coming to get us, oh she's sick, diseased, and it was definitely hard.
I really got inspired to do a lot more advocacy work around childhood cancer in general, and research funding, and pushing for access to care, and sort of from a process standpoint. And I think you got a little bit more focused on how to maybe reach out to kids who were kind of going through the same thing. I do really feel like holidays are a big deal for us, only because
you thought I wouldn't have them.
I was worried you wouldn't have them.
It definitely does make me grateful for being here. And I love showing other children that, like, you know what, it's gonna be okay, and even if it's not, we're gonna make it that way. And so being here, it makes me like kind of teary, and like I just want to tell all the kids like it's gonna be fine.